OBS Talk. Episode 152, Mr. Gary Case, Stylin Concepts, with a little bit of Boris Marinovsky mixed in, Street Machinery.
And I will tell you, to this day, if you bought all the shit that we sold to put under the hood of your truck, it was the most gaudy cluster mess you could imagine. I mean, we had every cover you could imagine made out of aluminum or billet aluminum. If you bought every piece of carriage works, dash, the under dash, you know, the overlays, the door panels, the seat risers, the sill plates, the kick plates, the vents, the speaker. If you bought all that shit at one time, it was god awful gaudy as hell. But you know,
run the cash register.
You know, there was a point where a lot of them trucks were called case clones because they all, if you saw one, they all started looking the same back then, you know?
Damn, son. Vintage Air. Their SureFit kits are the best value and the most completely engineered AC systems you can install in your truck. The choice is obvious. VintageAir.com. When you think air suspension for your build, you think AccuAir. Whether it's the ease of their plug-and-play installation, the E-Level touchpad, or their new Endo platform, it's better by design and it's zero compromise for you and your truck. AccuAir. Whether you're looking to replace your original steering, update those old brakes, or improve your suspension and handling, Classic Performance Products has got your classic truck covered. You can save 10% by using code C10TALK at checkout. 10%. ClassicPerform.com. If you're looking for aftermarket parts for your OBS truck, Pro Performance is your go-to source. They carry the top brands for wheels, brakes, suspension, and accessories. Check them out on the web at azproperformance.com. That's azproperformance.com.
Welcome to C10 Talk, your C10 Truck podcast. Here's your host, Ronnie Welch.
OBS Talk, here we go, cruising right along and having a really good time doing it. Episode 152, Gary Case, Stylin Concepts, and then Boris Marinovsky, Boris, Street Machinery, the man, the myth, the legend. He was the contact that knew Gary, so made that happen, which was really cool. Now, episode 152 is mostly about Stylin Concepts and how that all kind of came about. We also recorded some Saudi stuff, so the show that's going to happen in November in Riyadh, however you say it, that's through Global Auto Salon, I think, and a lot going on with that. But you probably heard some rumblings about that car auction and everything. A lot of guys sending American metal over to Saudi, big money stuff. Well, Gary's behind that. So at a certain point, we kind of broke it off, and I will release that next. So I was able to kind of extract the first part and put together a really good show for Stylin Concepts, which, if you think about it, 87 to 95 is where Gary's at. And that era for us in the OBS Nation and the OBS, truck owners back then and currently. So you all remember that ad, I assume, in a sport truck and so on and so forth. That next part of the Saudi and the auction will be next week. So I'll drop that. I thought I'd kind of keep them separate. So hopefully that works out. OBS at SEMA. So old body style SEMA 2019. Now, there's a few trucks that we're going to see, and they're really looking awesome. So I want you to pay close attention and keep an eye on Provost Motorsports, been on the show, Sean and his team, and the truck that they're building. And then Joey G and the Bitchin' Boys, Trey 5, Joey G, and the crew there are putting together a killer. I've posted and reposted a few on both of their builds, but lately it's been Joey G because I've been seeing a lot of that, the red frame, GSI, big hoops, black SS. They're calling it Blackjack. It's a killer build. Now, Mark Oya, who's also been on the show, he also is going to have a truck at SEMA 2019, and it's going to be rad. So I've talked to him a little bit. I haven't seen any spy photos, but I see what he's doing, and I see based upon a picture he's painting. I don't visually see it, but a few OBSs, and I'm sure there's going to be more than those 3. But again, Mark, Joey, Provost, those guys, OBS, so pay close attention to that, and that ought to be a lot of fun. Now, I'll be at SEMA doing what I do, running around, doing interviews, and trying to keep you guys informed on that. Right after SEMA, the Get Down 2019, November 15th is the Get Down. Now, November 14th is the pre-show. That's going to be the party, the mixer at Trey Fives. Now, the 15th, Friday, that's the big dog. That's going to be the Get Down 2019. That's going to be out at Westgate in Phoenix. That's an all-day deal there. Now, Dino is definitely wanting guys to show up at 11. That's a big thing. I'll probably get with Dino before then, and we'll do another media blast on some more specifics. If you're thinking about coming out, I think there's going to be, I think there might be 1,000 trucks this year. It's going to be crazy. Saturday the 16th, there's going to be a cruise that we all go from Westgate out to Switch Suspension. It's about 30 miles. It's going to probably take us about 30 to 45 minutes. I posted a little freeway cruise from 2017, and you guys get kind of an idea. Now, that video was a little crazy because it was pretty congested. Hopefully, this time in this run, which is a little longer, will be a little more open. But we'll all be cruising from Get Down West Phoenix area to Mesa, and it's an easy freeway shot, so it'll be a lot of fun on that. So Get Down 2019, Thursday the mixer, Trey 5, the Get Down itself on Friday the 15th, and then Saturday you've got good guys you can hit, you've got Seth, Switch Suspension you can hit, and there'll be plenty of activities including after parties. Speaking of after parties, C10 Vatos is going to have a little Wednesday party at SEMA. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're going to come into town, you're going to be at SEMA, C10 Vatos, they're going to have a little taco party that they did last year as well. I think it's at Atomic Liquors, and I think it starts like at 7 or 8, maybe even 9 o'clock at night. So pay close attention to their social media. For us, party on Thursday is going to be the C10 Nation Day. That's going to be in the United Pacific booth, and that is in Central Hall 23175. 23175. Stop by 11 to noon. There'll be a handful of shirts and some different stuff that we're going to give out through UP, through United Pacific. I think they're going to give out a set of lights. Obviously, they made so many shirts, and I'll have a few things as well to give out. So stop on by, say hi. Johnny G's Garage, Kyle Metalox, they'll both be there. That truck that they built is in the United Pacific booth, and then yours truly will be there as well. So C10 Nation, show up, and let's have a good time, meet and greet, and just support the scene. So that's Thursday, and whatever the hell, November, I think it's like 7th. I should know that. But Thursday of SEMA. All right, let's do a few reviews. Let's take it back again to 18. We're still trying to get caught up on these, but we're doing good. We're catching up, which is a good thing. You guys keep leaving reviews. It'll take me a while to get caught up. I like that. Mr. Dropped Lowered, Carlos, thanks for leaving a review. Great podcast, 5 stars. Dude is a stud. Podcast is always great. He is always about the scene and is a pillar in the C10 community. Thank you. His hats are a little bit itchy, but that's okay. They look great. Thank you. Keep up the great work, lineman, because even firefighters need heroes. So that should be more of a lineman, because even firefighters need heroes. And he's absolutely correct. Cops need heroes, firefighters need heroes, linemen. I don't know who lineman heroes are. Probably strippers. I don't know. I'll have to ask him who his hero is. All right. Thanks, Carlos. Appreciate it.
5 stars. Perfect. Thank you.
Best way to stay in the loop, 5 stars by Gasoline Images. The C10 scene is bigger than ever. I look forward to each show to get the haps on what's going on in the C10 Nation. I live in the Northeast, and the truck scene is fairly non-existent. I usually listen in the gym or when I'm in the garage working on my 86 C10. Great show. Gasoline Images. Thank you, brother. Thanks for leaving a 5-star review, and thanks for tuning in, because that's what it's all about, especially in some of the areas where here I'm lucky because there's stuff going on all the time. But certain places where it's not, we're glad we can connect and keep you guys in the loop on what's going on.
5 stars. Perfect. Thank you.
Best automotive podcast, period. I agree. Thanks, Travis Harris. Love the show and all that Ronnie does for the C10 world. Great content. I'm always excited when I get to hear a new episode. Check out my Instaballs at Travis Harris 93 to see my 87 square. Insta balls. I kind of like Insta wiener because, you get a little boner, but Insta balls, well, check it out. Travis at Travis Harris 93. Travis, thanks for doing that.
5-star, perfect. Thank you.
For you guys out there, please take the time to subscribe when you listen to the pod. If you're coming over from one of the recent pods and you haven't gotten caught up, you can check out the old pod at c10talk.com. We have the whole bank, all 151, now 152 shows. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe or leave us a review, please take the time to do that. I appreciate that. The Richard Rawlings episode is continuing to do very well. Of course, people want to hear what Richard has to say, whether they really want or they just want to hate on it. I will say that the the general consensus that I've been getting back on that, some texts, some emails, some direct messages, is the dude doesn't seem as big of a douche as I thought he was. And I would agree. He actually seems to be a pretty good dude. He's very honest, and he's always been good to me. So check out episode 151 if you haven't. Richard Rawlings, Mr. Gas Monkey Garage himself. Episode 150, going backwards, was C10s in the Park. Episode 149 was the intervention, the C10 intervention. So a couple good ones there. I think that's about it, really. We've got some OBS shirts and hats. They're in full stock, and we will have those at the Get Down. If you're not coming out for the Get Down, hit us up at either obstalk.com or c10nation.com, and you can check out, we've got OBS Talk banners, hats. The shirt we have is an Obsessed shirt. It's pretty rad. Obsessed Trucks. And we do have our leather keychains that are always do really well. So if you've got a truck specifically, OBS truck, check out those leather keychains. Those are cool to have. So they do well as well. So you can check those out at c10nation.com, obstalk.com, or c10talk.com. A lot of .coms there. That's it. I'm going to let you get into listening to Gary and Boris. And then again, remember the Riyadh Global Auto Salon or something like that. And so let's get into Gary and Stylin Concepts, and the Riyadh, Saudi Arabia episode will be next week. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for doing what you do. Please love the pod, like the pod, share the pod. Have a great week. Late. All right. What up, C10 Nation? From this perspective, a little bit of OBS Nation, OBS Talk. We've got Gary Case on the line, Stylin Concepts, and no need for any introduction, Mr. Boris Marinovsky, Street Machinery, and Facebook legend, Sunday Swaparama. Boris was on episode 36 of C10 Talk, and believe it or not, Boris, that was April of 2016, so that's been about 3 years ago. Both of you, Gary and Boris, thanks for coming back on, Boris.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Connor.
All right, guys. So, Gary, hotter than hot right now, or getting there. These we just kind of did a little introduction off the air because I hadn't met Gary, and we were talking about the 88 to 98 or the old body style, the OBS, and that was a big part of who you were back in the day. Tell the audience who Gary Case is, please.
I started out, we were building hot rods and restoring exotics in the early 80s, 1983, 1985, and 1988. I was Hot Rod Magazine's top 10 builder of the year for cars that I built in those years. In 1991, I won the Riddler Award for the best cars shown in America. Back then, we were just doing all street rods and hot rods, and like I said, restoring some Ferraris and that. And how Stylin Concepts sport truck accessories came into play. I was building a 1940 Ford for a customer that was runner-up for Hot Rod Magazine's Car of the Year. And if you can remember Scott Sullivan's orange 55 Chevy, that car beat my 40 Ford out for Car of the Year when he drove that car across country with Jeff Smith, the editor of Hot Rod back then. But when I was building that 40, the customer he had the older body style 87 crew cab dualies, and he brought it in for us to lower it, dechrome it, shave it, clean it up. Well, by the time we got done with that truck, we netted more money on the tow truck than the 5,000 man hours we had in the runner-up for car of the year for Hot Rod Magazine. Back then, there was sport truck was just being introduced. This is in 1987, and Kevin O'Donnell was the head designer for GM Truck Studio for GMC, and he was sending me renderings of what the 88 body style was going to be. So we already had a little bit of an idea what the curve was going to be on that truck. So in 1988, a fellow by the name of Jim Stavis, and back then Sport Truck Magazine was just being launched as a bi-monthly. And he's from the Cleveland area where I'm from. So on his way, he worked for Peterson Publishing, and on his way back to California, he stopped and told me about this new launch of a magazine, Sport Truck Magazine, and it was going to be a bi-monthly. And he talked me into taking out an ad for truck parts because he knew we just lowered this dually and we were starting to do a little bit on the older body style trucks. So we took out an ad, and I was still building the hot rods, and we didn't know nothing about mail order. So the phone I'd leave my shop and I would call forward from my shop to my home. So I would answer the phone, Stylin Concepts, Sport Truck Accessories, 24 hours a day when we were starting out. Sleeping, whatever, just wake up and answer the phone, take the order. Kind of the same thing Boris does to this day. So, street machine. When you live in a lifestyle like that, it's a 24/7 gig. You never really turn it off. So, with that being said, I'll never forget, I was Beltec's first warehouse distributor other than Jegs and Summit. And the fella that I built that 44 for, the buy-in that Jim Fairweather, who was the president of Beltec at the time, was $10,000 for a buy-in, which was a lot of money back in 1988.
Sure.
I didn't even have the money to do the buy-in back then because the ad was $3,500, and I ran a 4-colored ad, and nobody was running full-colored ads back then. So that was $3,500. I had to pay it up front because I had no credit established with the magazine because of the new launch. So I borrowed $10,000 from the guy that I was building that 40 Ford for to do the buy-in for the Beltec suspension. So we get the product sent in. The ad goes out. A good friend of mine, Kurt Cunningham, was also a hot rod builder. And back in 87, he started a company called Carriage Works. Well, it was actually before that, but he switched over to building billet grills, Carriage Works billet grills back in 87. So our ad consisted of Carriage Works billet grills, Beltec suspension, a couple of roll pans, and that was it. Well, the needless to say, when a second ad came out, I didn't have the 3,500 because we didn't sell enough product the first month. So we ended up selling off half of the inventory of Beltec, the initial buy-in, to Jegs because I knew the buyer at Jegs. He was the vice president of Mr. Gasket that left Mr. Gasket back in the day to go work for Jegs. So they bought half my inventory back just so I could pay for the ad. And, once we got past that first few months, then things started clicking and we took out ads in trucking, and back then it was Hot Truck, and all those magazines went to monthly, and we went from a one-page colored ad to, I don't know if the guys remember the type of ads that we ran, but we ran 6-8 pages of full colored ads back in the day. It was almost like a catalog in the magazines. And back then you could buy registrations for vehicle owners. So Stylin Concepts only sold products for American-made trucks. Chevrolet, GMC, Ford, and Dodge. That's all we sold products for. And then we launched an event called the Sport Truck Nationals, which we tied into the American manufacturer theme over the 4th of July weekend. So when Stylin Concepts then started, because of our contact with GMC, we were able to build support vehicles for the IndyCar circuit, the NHRA safety safari back then, and we built a lot of sweepstakes giveaway trucks for sport truck, trucking, hot truck, and then, pretty much the rest. Once it got going, man, it just hit and pretty much changed my wife and my life. We went from taking calls out of our bedroom to when I sold the company in 1995, we had almost 60 employees back then. So it was a great ride, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, we'll get into, selling in 95, but you went from 87 to 95, which is crazy how fast. And to think that, you and your wife are laying there watching, I don't know, Jay Leno, or I don't know what time Johnny Carson went off, but you're watching the Tonight Show. And next thing you know, you got some kid in Arizona calling, hey, I want to buy this, this grill. I want to buy this roll pan. And you guys are moving and shaking. I think the biggest thing is you went from, 87 to 95, but talk about the turbulence, talk about the growing pains, talk about, you had to be pinching yourself to think, okay, we went from barely affording a small ad, and now we've got a 6-page ad, and we're running these ads in more than one, magazine. This is crazy. This is success.
Yeah. It happened real quick. And, I look back and I look at the chances and the risk that I took. It's like I was either crazy or I just had a lot of balls, or probably a little bit of both. But the bank had the note on my house more than I had the note on my house back then. We literally, through a company called R.L. Polk, back then you could buy registrations. So I would buy every Chevy, GMC, Ford, Dodge, and then we would do a specific catalog for that manufacturer truck. Because what I realized is that guys with F-150s, if you were showing headlight covers on a Silverado, they couldn't comprehend or visualize it on their particular make and model of truck.
Sure.
So we actually had catalogs for a Jimmy Blazer, the Blazer, that was one, S10, S15 small truck. Then we had an S15, S10 pickup truck catalog. And then we had the Silverado GMC Sierra catalog. And then we had a Tahoe Suburban catalog. And then we had a Ford catalog. And then we had a Dodge catalog. Well, we would have all of specific registration and vehicle owners. So if you owned a C1500, a 1990, I knew it because I bought your registration, and we would do a direct mail right to your door. So talk about rolling the dice. We would do these 4-color off-the-wall catalogs, and back then everything was 35 millimeter. You had to strip the film with a loop. I mean, there was none of this digital stuff like today.
Yeah.
It was all manually done. We took our one back warehouse, turned it into a photo studio, and we were doing this all in-house. We didn't have any expertise on photography or anything. We were all just self-taught on all of the marketing and that. And then, when you would print these catalogs, and when you would take them to the post office, you got to pay for the postage up front. So it was a huge, we started with borrowing $10,000 in 1987. And like I said, it was, we were very fortunate. It was a lot of work, a lot of sacrifices. My wife stayed behind me. I'm 67. I've been with my wife since she was 13 and I was 16. So it's been a hell of a ride. I'll tell you that. Now it's all coming back again.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy.
Isn't it funny too to think how many times? I mean, I would spend $5 on a catalog, and I was excited about it. I would literally spend money on a catalog.
We charged for catalogs back then, $5. You're exactly right. That's what we charged. Then if you bought something, we gave you credit for it.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to find a way to offset my initial expenses, because back then, you do a catalog drop, it'd be $35,000 in postage when you're mailing these catalogs out. So it was a huge risk, and like I said, I look back and either I was crazier or I had a lot of balls, or both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. That's why you and Boris get along. It's funny to think too. We used to have to write a check, so you'd have to have a check or ask your mom or whatever, and I don't remember putting $5 cash, but we probably did, and then we would mail it off to wherever we were getting the catalog, and then the catalog would come back, and you'd be elated about it. How cool would it be? Do you still have any of those catalogs around, Gary?
I have my first initial catalog that was black and white. And I'll tell you, I took the pictures on a stepladder, and I had brown shipping paper on the checkerboard floor, so you didn't see the black and white checkerboard floor. And the front of the catalog said, "Do it with style." And it was literally like a pocket catalog, like you just stick in your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have one of those, and I still have some of the catalogs from when we started out and how we evolved from this little black and white pocket catalog. There was literally just truly 8 pages at the most, and to this day, the owner of Carriage Works and we talk a minimum of once a week. The relationship, Beltec Fairweather changed a lot. Beltec was a very aggressive marketing company back then. They had a marketing guy by the name of Rich Hedrick. And Rich was the one, if you remember the Beltec poster with all the girls in the bikinis, You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
That was all Rich Hedrick. And back then, Jim Fairweather was a president, and Janine was the vice president. And they were never married, but she was a very controlling part of the Beltec business back in the day there. And we did the first. They had a product manager by the name of Jim Morris, and I'll never forget. We had a 1990 Extendicab. We put a Corvette suspension under it because Beltec was trying to go after that conversion market and that. And there was a Sport Truck had a contest called the Pickup Trick Up Contest, and it was out in Pomona, California. And back then, it was Traders and Stillin and AIM Industries and us, and it was all by popular vote. And that truck won the best truck of the year, and it was called Fine Lines. It was black with purple pinstripes going all the way down. It had a Corvette rear suspension in it. But Beltec was pretty instrumental in helping us change the sport truck market back in 1988 to when we sold it.
I agree. I mean, they had a huge part in everything that was going on, because really, to put those trucks lower, and they made it, at that point. One thing we like to talk about, Gary, from the OBS perspective, the 88 to 98, is how that truck became an accepted styling truck, to where guys would take a square body, let's say a second gen, slope nose, square headlight, square body. And at that point, you'd start to see them painted. You'd see some 67 to 72 stuff, really radical painted, obviously the mini truck era that we all remember. But then, GM and the dealers, and they were teaming up with guys like you and Boyd and Foose, and these guys were making these trucks right off the showroom floor where you would go and buy it, and they had made that formula and that recipe, and that was really the first styling truck that we could have access to. And man, and for me, I was in junior high and high school. It was the real deal.
Well, I'll tell you, earlier in the conversation, I told you I came out of the street rod market, So I can't tell you enough that back in 1988 to the mid 90s, of course, we had a big rig. We worked our way up from a little shitbox trailer to finally a big rig. But we would go to all of the street rod national events. And back in the day, every street rod guy had a Chevrolet or a GMC pickup truck. Every one of them. And to this day, I can go to a Good Guys event, and guys will, even the one in Columbus last year, guys would come up to me and they're old street rod guys. They don't have their street rods anymore, but they still got their 1500 truck that we did for them back in 1988, 1989. They still own them. And it's not one or two. I mean, a lot of these guys have kept these trucks stuck in their garage. My brother's a perfect example. He's got a 1990 that I did for him, and he still has it. And he was just telling Boris, how many miles have you got? 30,000. He's got 30,000 miles on it. Truck's never been in the rain yet. I mean, they're still out there. It's crazy, But every street rod owner, 32, 33, 34 Ford guy, had a Chevrolet lowered pickup back in the day. And we would kill it because we were the only guys at the street rod events selling sport truck accessories.
I think I'm going to need you to pull the registration on those guys so I can find out where they live. Since you're the go-to on those. Oh, shit. I know Boris. Boris is already digging through your old list, Gary.
Yeah, we're keeping those as trump cards. We're just making the market get a little bit higher,
Well, it's cool to think too that was the time. If I think it's all an era time where if you look back to let's just say 88. Well, those guys were in their 40s, right? And then they were making some money. They bought they had you guys build them a car, or they were street rodders and they had a car, and they're like, well, hell, this is a cool truck. And so it's funny to see the time frame of it in those guys' lives, and then whether they had so much money in their car and they're like, screw this, I'm getting rid of this car, but damn, this truck's nice, I'm keeping this truck.
Yeah.
So what would you say when you look back on that, and now you see what's starting to happen? I mean, it's really already happening, and those trucks are coming back, and they are back, and then we're going to start to see them better than they were, really, if that's a thing. C10 Nation, let me tell you about my buddies Travis, his dad Jack, aka Dad, and Nick. They run Pro Performance, AZ Pro Performance. They're active in our community. They're C10 guys. They're always working on new stuff, like their new suspension line, React Suspension. They're master dealers for AccuAir, Dakota Digital, Bear, Boyd Welding, Vintage Air, and many more. They're C10 specialists and stock many fast-moving products backed by their stellar customer service. Not only do they sell C10 parts, but they live and breathe C10s and are very active in our community. Like I said, look for them at your next truck show. Nick might be there if they let him out, but usually Travis and his dad, Jack, and they want to talk to you and help you out with your C10 project. Follow them on Instagram, Facebook, and you can also check out their Facebook group called C10 Addiction. So check them out and let them know that I sent you. Hey guys, I've got Kathy White, Classic Performance Products, CPP on the line. Kathy, how's it going?
Hey Ronnie, what's up?
What's up? What's new?
We've got a ton of things for the C10 community. First things first, our 2.5-inch Extreme X10 drop spindle. So we've upgraded the current modular spindle to modern technology. This new X10 spindle is a one-piece forged, but it utilizes strong, modern, bolt-in, internally sealed bearing hub assembly. So it's low maintenance, it doesn't move the wheels out, and you can use big brakes from us or any aftermarket big brakes out there in the market.
That's awesome. What else is new?
So we have actually gone back and redesigned our aluminum fuel tanks. As you know, our fuel tanks are the thickest, strongest, and largest capacity in the industry. But now you can actually use the same tank for either a carbureted or a fuel injection application. 63 to 72, it's 20 gallons, and for 73 and newer, 22-gallon capacity.
How about that coilover kit? You guys must be killing it with that thing.
That is such a great kit. It's fully bolt-on. It's easy to install. strongest tubular arms in the market, available with either upper and lower or just the lowers or just a coilover kit by themselves. All the mounting brackets that you need, and it also comes with dual adjustable coilover shocks. So it's really responsive. It's up to you however you want to tune the compression or the rebound. It's perfect if you're just cruising on the streets, and it's proven on the track.
Well, that's what we like. So if you need spindles, the new X10, fuel tanks, coilovers, they've got it. Classic Performance Products, CPP, and don't forget, use code C10TALK, C10TALK at checkout and save 10%. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Ronnie.
We're going to start to see them better than they were, really, if that's a thing.
Oh, I think absolutely. You know, I think that'll be the next wave in the truck market. Not that the 63, 72 truck isn't hot still, you know, but everything evolves, you know. When markets start to get a little bit not saturated, but when there's been a lot of work, and those trucks have been not neglected, they've just been forgot of in the last, you know, Bobby Alloway, he's a hot rod builder. He's a good friend of mine. You know, he's got every new old stock sheet metal from that 88 up body style. He was buying Chevy parts inventory from dealerships down in Tennessee. He has them all. He's just waiting. There's a lot of the old hot rod guys that have access to a lot of these parts, and they're just waiting for the market to get to where it's evolving rapidly today.
Well, we're getting close. I know I've even gotten a catalog. The truck shop out of Orange, you know, when they released their 88 to 98, and I'll be honest with you, there's not that much stuff in there, but when you start seeing the catalogs come back, and then you kind of know, and really it comes down to affordability. So the kids, the young men, you hope they kind of keep it going. And if they can't afford a 67 to 72, which we know they can't, and then, you know, then it's looking like a square body, and those all of a sudden got, you know, crazy popular. Some guy from Ohio decided to put a Hellcat in one and then freaking go romping around the world in it. And now everybody wants a freaking Hellcat swapped square body, Boris. Right. And then you know, so it'll be affordability. Boris, because Gary's probably skipping over a lot based on being humble, what do you remember about that time from 87 to 95 when Stylin Concepts was just ruling the world and running big ads in catalogs and magazines?
Well, I remember specifically, I had a Chevelle and I walked into, there was a speed shops. They went out of business. It was called Super Shops. And I walked in, and they had you walk in, there's a distinctive smell of tires, of BF Goodrich tires, radial TAs. I just remember, I could smell it it brings me back to that time. But they had, and I don't think it was a Beltec ad. I think it was an ad for a bed cover or something, but they had a slammed regular cab, 88 pickup, set of wheels on it. I think they were 15-inch billet wheels, and I said, I got to get one of those. So literally the next day, I saw one sitting in a grocery store parking lot for sale. It was an 89 Sport, and let's see, an 89. I wasn't that young yet. Let's see, I mean that old. So I would have been about 20 years old. So I went and bought that truck. I had to borrow, beg, steal. Got the money, went and bought it. Was original owner. First thing I did was lowered it, and I couldn't wait to start on the next one. I sold that one, and I bought the 454 SS truck when they came out. Oh. And this was really before I knew of Gary, but I didn't know him, because when I would go to the store, I would actually drive to the store, pick up my spindles and my lowering kit, and I just remember going in there and looking around, see what else, and I was buying the goofiest shit, man. I was buying the chrome AC cover, the chrome cap for my master cylinder, back in the day, trying to dress up the engine compartment. But I went through dozens of those trucks in the early 90s, and it wasn't until I think 94 there was in Trucking Magazine, there was I think his name was Brian McCormick. He was an editor. Yeah. He was an editor. He had a black He had a black extended cab 94. And ironically, a kid that worked for me was from California, and he went to school with Brian McCormick. And I go, damn, I wish I knew what wheels were backspace and what size those wheels were. And he goes, oh, I can call the kid and ask him. I know him. I went to high school with him. I said, get out of here. He goes, I'm in Ohio, in Euclid, Ohio. And a kid working for me went to school with Brian McCormick. I mean, and he did. He called him and got the backspace and everything. I ordered my first set of 17-inch wheels. Man, I thought it was the shit. That was late 1994. I ordered a brand new 95. And, since then, I've had several. I still have my old body style 99 crew cab that I've had for going on, I think, 17 or 18 years. It's been through just about every state in the country. So, yeah, I mean, I never lost my love for those trucks. I mean, I don't think I was ever without one. I still have a 96 two-door, two-wheel drive Tahoe that I bought in Pigeon Forge in 1997 that had 9,000 miles on it. I still own it today. It might have like 30,000 miles on it. I've had it in storage since, I think, for the last 19 years, and we keep talking about going to dig it out one of these days so I can start driving it again. There hasn't been a time in my adult life that I have not owned an old body style truck, at least one.
They're rad, and they're coming back, and you just nailed it. Those Tahoes and then the crew cabs, those ones are really, starting to get to where, and then obviously the 454 SSs, and then even remember the 350 SS, and then just a Sport, I remember.
The Sport was my first.
Yeah, I went and test drove one time. I wanted to buy one, and I went and test drove, and it was a red Sport 4x4. And what I liked about the four-wheel drives, now it was a short bed, but it had those, those had the flare on it, so it kind of had the integrated style, like HD style flare on those four-wheel drives. And it was red. It was so rad. I got in it, and it was used. I can't remember how old I was at the time, and I just remember driving it, and I'm like, I can't buy this. This thing is gutless. Like, what's going on here? And that's the old, Auto Trader days where people would just, who knows what they said. But it was a V6, and I'm like, no wonder this thing can't even get out of its own way. And it probably had like 32s on it or something like that. But I was like, as soon as I saw it, I fell in love with it. I wanted to buy it. I probably would have bought it, but I took my older brother with me, and I remember going, man, something's going on here. I popped the hood, and then I kind of felt jaded. Like, I'm like, you didn't tell me it was a V6, you son of a bitch. I just drove all the way up here, and but nonetheless, I mean, they were captivating and they were sexy.
Yeah, I love mine. Mine was red as well, and I was lucky to buy it. I think I paid $7,000 for it. It had about 40 or 60,000 miles, and it was the original owner. He owned a detail shop. I still vividly remember calling the number. I was with my girlfriend at the time, which is my wife now, and I remember he had owned a detail shop, so the truck was flawless. It was absolutely perfect. And I was just so excited. I paid $7,000. I still remember, and that was a lot of money for me, And after I lowered it and drove it for about a year, I put it in a local newspaper, and a car dealer, a new car store buyer came and bought it and put it on on a Nissan or Datsun on their used car lot. And then that's when I bought my first 454 SS with the money from that truck.
Now, you still don't have that truck, I assume, or you do?
No, those are all gone. The only ones I have now is my 99 old body style crew cab short bed and my 96 two-wheel drive two-door top.
So 96 too for the audience, and I'm assuming if you're listening to OBS talk, you know this, but 96 was the Vortec heads. That was a big deal, and then 95 was the new interior, and at the time the 88 to 94 interior, to me as a young man, was really kind of retarded, especially because the way it was squared and the vent. I always kind of make a joke, whoever engineered that dash was he was banging the boss's wife or something, because you're like, how did that vent, especially in Arizona, get approved? Because all it did was just hit the right side of the where the radio was. But now I find that I kind of prefer the 88 to 94, and I think it's just based on nostalgia.
Yeah.
I see a 95 interior, and the cup holder is obviously something we can make fun of, the way that it kind of pulls out. At the time, I thought that was actually pretty cool because you would just drink a small soda can, or maybe somebody a barley pop as they rolled through the roads.
Hey,
but go ahead, Gary.
Hey, that pull-out drink holder, we used to sell those through Stylin Concepts for the guys that didn't have. I don't know how many of those things we sold, man, and it was like crazy. And can you imagine this today? We used to do for like zones, like Chevy dealers and GMC dealers. You could actually go into a GMC dealer and buy a Stylin Concepts truck. Now, with a C-section in the back, the frame cut apart, drop spindles, really not tested by GM. I mean, you could go in and finance. Could you imagine that today? No way.
Yeah.
But back then, the dealers were aggressive enough and saw the growth in the market with that new body style in 1988. It was crazy. I mean, you could just go in and finance, a custom painted void wheels, 4.6 drop Silverado right from the dealer.
They were selling.
A lot of the dealers were also hot rod guys, so they were getting it.
Yeah.
A lot of the dealers.
So
Tim
Tim Susmanian, who owns Traders, is still a good friend of mine.
Sure.
And they had a Chevy dealer out there, and Bob Komos was the general manager, who was a big street rod guy, but he was a general manager for the Chevy dealer out in California. And Boyd built Bob Komos a lot of street rods back in the day. Well, the fact that the general manager was a hot rod guy, man, they were killing it. Tim was building them. I think he was building more of them than we were building them for that one Chevy dealership out of California. We were building them for the zone of GMC and Chevrolet dealers, So, but I don't think that stuff would fly today. Altered suspensions like that.
No, you're right. I mean, the liability alone. But what's crazy is how would you guys, both being from Ohio and being, back east, we think everything comes from Cali, the West Coast, and now you're telling me, hey, we were facilitating that. So, and then you became friends with traders. I mean, explain kind of how that works, because there's no internet and it takes shit a long time, in my opinion. A kid who grew up in Montana and moved to Arizona, I'm 4 years behind when I moved down to Arizona. So things obviously started in the West and they moved their way east. I'm assuming because of your hot rod presence and your, old school car presence, that you were part of this trend, or starting the trend.
Well, I think my relationships with Tim goes back to when we were running these 4-colored ads in the magazine. Stillin was in there, and Joe Morrow was in there with AIM Industries, and Cal, our Car Custom, was in there. But I don't think anybody was taking the risk with the amount of ad space that we were taking. So I was Boyd Coddington's first wheel distributor in the United States, selling wheels out of our display trailer back in the 80s. And when some of these competitions to send a truck out to California, Tim and I just developed a relationship, and it was a healthy competitor. Sometimes competition's good. It forces you to be more aggressive. And I don't think I would be exaggerating by saying that Traders and Stylin Concepts were the two leaders in that market in the late 80s and early 90s. And I think we pushed each other, I know when Sport Truck would come out, I would try and get an advanced issue so I could see what kind of ad he was running. And I know he was doing the same thing. Because he was out in California, he would be getting the pre-cuts of the magazine before they even printed, seeing what the hell I was doing, So
he was taking the editor and the print guy out to lunch, brother.
Exactly, because he was right there.
Yeah.
I'm 3,000 miles away, just winging it. We still have a very good relationship to this day.
Yeah, that's, to me, that's the story I'm going to take from this, because I just think it's so cool how, the cream rises to the top. I mean, you guys are getting along, and as long as it stays healthy, then it made you both better, and then you have a friendship and a kinship that will last forever.
Right.
Yeah, because there's no, what I was going to say is there's no computer where they'll send you the ad right on the computer now. There's no, I don't see that flying over to Stylin Customs, Gary at Stylin Customs in your email box. Yeah, here's what your latest ad looks like.
No, it was all, ad salesmen. My ad guy is still with, Peterson Publishing, sold to EMAP, which sold to, now it goes under the Motor Trend name. But my same ad salesman that I had in the 80s is still working for the same publishing company. And actually, I'm going to Saudi Arabia. He's going over there because he's part of the Motor Trend group.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy. We started that truck show in, we actually started, the first year we started it in Pigeon Forge. And after Pigeon Forge, I don't know if the audience remembers Army Armstrong, who used to do all of the monster truck commentating back in the day. And Army is in the Hall of Fame for that monster truck venues. And he was at the first one, and he said, you need to move this thing to Owensboro. And I didn't even know where Owensboro was, to be honest with you, in Kentucky. And I went down there. I was at the Street Rod Nationals in Louisville, and one of the fellas who actually just passed away, Meatball, who was in Good Guys this past month, they would have salute to him. He's the one that told me, he said, well, here, we'll just jump in and drive to Owensboro. Well, we got in there. I said, it's okay, but I got to be back. I got a display here. I got a vend in a commercial booth. I can't be out super late. Well, we got on. We started driving, and we're driving for like 3 hours, and he realized he was going the wrong way. We were by Bowling Green, Kentucky. It was nowhere near Owensboro, Kentucky. And so we drove 3 hours wrong way. We drove 3 hours back. The next night, we got where we needed to go, and he took me to Owensboro on Saturday night. And, it was a huge hotel on the Ohio River, and the city was really accommodating. And that event was by far a great changing on the customer base for Stylin Concepts back in the day also. That event was just something else. Boris used to go to that event. He can tell you about it.
Yeah, so explain that, from a perspective of you throwing that event, and then Boris as you attending, and then once I kind of came out with OBS Talk, I'll be honest with you, I'm sure I saw it in the magazines. I don't remember it, but people were very, they had fond memories and they were excited. I mean, people were pulling up old shirts and old registration tags that they still had from the Sport Truck Nationals. Yeah,
it was, like I mentioned, it was only American-made trucks, and it was based on the 4th of July. So as close as the 4th of July weekend or weekday was, we would base that event. And the city of Owensboro would shut down the whole town. Now, we're talking a small town, but they would shut it down. The Executive Inn was a very, very large hotel on the Ohio River. And they would have a paddle boat that you could take rides on the Ohio River behind it. And major country acts used to play. I mean, this place was big in the day. And they would shut that whole hotel down. And there was a stretch, a side road off to the hotel, and we used to call it the $1 Million Mile. And trucks would just be lined up. You could drive your truck there, park it, and never move it the whole weekend at all. And we had major vendors there. Our giveaway prizes during the award ceremony was luck of the draw. And I don't mean it wasn't T-shirts and hats. I mean, we were giving away billet wheels back then. suspension kits, BFG tires. It was tonneau covers, everything you can imagine for a truck. And I mean, the minimum gift was probably $250 was the minimum. And we were just lucky to draw. We had, confetti cannons going off and smoke machines and pyrotechnics. This is inside an auditorium.
On a Sunday afternoon.
Nobody would leave. The event we would have the ceremony at 1:00, and we used to put the top 25 trucks. Now you got to imagine, I had to pay a photo lab to stay open all night. It was 35 millimeter slides. They had to strip them and put them on slides so we could put them in the projector. So the photo lab we would pay to stay open all night so they could process this film. Well, we wouldn't get this shit back until like 11 o'clock Sunday morning or 12 o'clock. We had people banging on the door to get to get front row seats by like 11 o'clock. The thing didn't start till 1 o'clock, the award ceremony. And nobody would leave. It was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable experience. So those are days that I'll cherish, and I was happy to be part of them.
That was in the mid '90s. That was the networking. Like going to Dino's now.
Yeah.
You talk to people at a get down. You see people that you only see on Instagram, or you meet people that have shops or build trucks or what have you. And we were doing that before we even knew what we were doing. I mean, I met guys that I still deal with to this day. Johnny Friend that owns Hunters. I mean, I met him then. There's just so many people that we still do business with today that I just met at the show on a personal level. I mean, nobody knew me back then at all. I mean, I was just the guy that had a lower truck, and I was a mechanic. That's all. I was just a grease monkey.
Hey, dig this. So back then, I don't know, maybe it was 90, 91. Did you win a set of wheels or tires?
Yeah, that was 90, 95. I won a set of centerline wheels.
Boris won a set of centerline wheels. So they pulled it. We would have young kids on the stage pulling the names out of a big drum.
No, it wasn't young kids. It was like hot 22, 23-year-old girls in nice skirts.
Well, they were young to me.
You had the Beltec marketing guy, see, because the hot chicks sell. It all works out, Gary.
They were young to me because I was in my 40s then. So
they were still hot, Gary. It's okay.
I was in my 20s.
So I'll never forget. They pulled Boris's name out, and I go, Boris. I couldn't even come close to pronouncing his last name. I jacked his name up so bad trying to say it. It was, and this is live. We're live in front of this audience. We would have, how many people would be in that audience?
Oh, it was standing remotely.
There would be, there would
huge
be
auditorium.
Thousands of people waiting for this giveaway to win. Like I say, Boris won a set of centerline wheels. It wasn't no T-shirts and hat giveaway stuff, But it was all, we were using it for marketing experience, and those events, man, that event coupled with the direct mail, with the catalogs and all that, they were just great times.
Yeah, you were on fire. How do you take us back a little bit, Gary, to the thing that we haven't really talked about? We've talked about the success, the mailing order, Stylin Concepts, but how did you come up with all this stuff? How did you say, well, these are going to be popular? Shaved door handles, some of the stuff did you fire and miss? Did some of the stuff you were like, I can't even imagine it will sell, and next thing you know, you're like, we can't even keep them in stock. This is everything that those trucks did and embodied. You guys kind of came up with a lot of that stuff.
So, because of my street ride influence, and I will tell you to this day, if you bought all the shit that we sold to put under the hood of your truck, it was the most gaudy cluster mess you could imagine.
Hey guys, have you heard about the most revolutionary advancement in automotive air management? Endo by AccuAir. AccuAir's heritage of innovation was built on trucks, being the builder's choice for over 15 years. AccuAir's latest invention is the Endo platform, a modular, bolted construction aluminum air tank with the stealthiest mounting system. Endo provides a leak-free tank. Leak-free. Hello, Who doesn't love that? With options for built-in valve manifolds and internal compressor solutions. That's right. The compressor is on the inside of the tank. Being on the inside of the tank means it's quiet. I'm talking library quiet, people. Head to endo.accuair.com to learn more about the Zero Compromise Air Management Package. endo.accuair.com. So you bought a C10 and you either had AC at one time or it wasn't even an option. Well, Vintage Air has the solution for you. Their SureFit kits are designed to place the evaporator and hoses behind the dash for a factory clean look. In most cases, the SureFit systems will be controlled by your stock dash controls using their exclusive cable converters. In some applications, a new factory look control panel is included with the kit. The SureFit systems provide full OEM-style operations, including air conditioning, floor or vent heating, and a powerful defroster. To retain a true factory look, the AC air exits through the factory dash louvers, if originally equipped in your truck. The Gen 4 kit provides infinite, just right temperature, air blending, and blower fan speed adjustments. The Vintage Air SureFit kits are the best value and the most completely engineered air conditioning system you can install in your C10. Add the fact that Vintage Air has been the most respected name in performance aftermarket climate control systems for 40 years. 40 years? Damn, son. The choice is obvious. VintageAir.com.
So, because of my street ride influence, and I will tell you to this day, if you bought all the shit that we sold to put under the hood of your truck, it was the most gaudy cluster mess you could imagine. I mean, we had every cover you can imagine made out of aluminum or billet aluminum. If you bought every piece of carriage works, dash, the under dash, the overlays, the door panels, the seat risers, the sill plates, the kick plates, the vents, the speaker vent. If you bought all that shit at one time, it was god awful gaudy as hell. But
Run the cash register.
There was a point where a lot of them trucks were called case clones because if you saw one, they all started looking the same back then, But the only way we differentiated was the wheel change and maybe the paint scheme. But it just comes from my street rod background, And actually, believe it or not, TJ that works for Boris, his dad. We started that smoothie bumper craze back in the day with either just a smooth bumper with that no impact strip on it or with recessed 4-inch driving lights in it or with recessed driving lights with a billet grill in it or a French license plate. Well, his dad, now the son works for Boris, his dad used to do all of the bumpers for me. And if you remember the aluminum coolant tanks that we used to sell, his dad used to weld all those coolant tanks up for me, and then my buddy that owns Billet Specialties used to make all of the anodized caps for him and all that. So it's pretty ironic that one of Boris's employees, his dad, and I remember TJ, who works for us, he was, just a little dinky kid back then, coming in with his dad bringing bumpers in the back of his pickup truck, But it's crazy how all that shit comes around,
Yeah. Did you guys ever, I could see Boris doing this and I it's a fun thing. Did you ever kind of say, let's make this and see what happens? And then you're like, I can't even believe this. They're selling. I mean, it's still like we almost did it on a fluke and it took off, or we set a new trend. I mean, some of the stuff that we look at now, like the Lambo doors, I don't think are coming back. I'm just saying.
No. And I will tell you, that is one part of the industry that I never had any play in. I never did any Lambo doors, never decided to sell the kits for that. I mean, we left that to some of the other guys, So, and that type of product really didn't warrant the C15, the 1500 truck. That was more of like the mini truck craze, And,
yeah.
Although we sold parts for for S10s and S15s, they were done more, I guess the word is tasteful than radical. Our customer base was really never the radical S10, S15 guys, or the foreign mini truck guys, because we didn't sell any foreign parts. It was just Chevrolet, GMC, Ford, or Dodge. That was it, and a lot of the street rod guys were into the smooth look, where we take the body side molding off and just weld the stake pocket holes up, and it was more of that look.
You nailed it. Tasteful and radical. For me, because being at the time being younger and not being a street rod guy, it was probably a little more radical in some of the things that were coming across. I do think that the morphing of the radical mini truck paint found its way over to the bigger full size trucks. And some
Without
of the so that is a really cool time. At the time you might be like, I don't know, but now looking back and some of the colors and the striping, obviously the Van Halen, the Eddie Van Halen OBS truck, but even before that, the turquoise colors, the greens, the yellows, the oranges, the brightness, the pops, that is a fun time.
And don't get me wrong, we did some of that stuff on our trucks. Actually, at the Sport Truck Nationals in Owensboro, we would actually have a complete transformation. The GMC dealer, Roberts GMC, would drop us off the truck on Thursday, and by the end of the weekend, it was lowered, wheel change, grill change, and custom painted. Back then, Nick Pastura, who does all of the Winston Cup NHRA helmets, if you look at all of the top fuel guys, if you look at the bottom corner, it says Nick Pastura. He used to do all of the roundy round. He still does a lot of the NASCAR guys. But he would do complete painting, custom painting. During the event, you could actually be out there under a tent watching them or help. And then Danny Taylor from Taylor's House of Color back in the day, he would be there also, and they would be pinstriping them. And yeah, so some of them exorbitant color schemes did morph over into the full-size truck, and we used to do complete demonstrations on that during the show.
Do you think that'll come back?
I don't think the radical colors will come back.
What do you think, Boris?
I don't think that's.
There was a little. I would say about 96. I remember Kerry Bewley brought the extended cab black with the checkerboard. That was kind of like the first time that I remember seeing on the East Coast a truck that had crazy graphics and color scheme. That was I wouldn't call that was pretty tasteful. I thought it was too much for me.
Sure.
But it was and it was kind of like what they were doing in Arizona, Southern California at the time. I think. I can't remember the guy, but he had an orange truck that was doing those kind of paint jobs. His name slips me right now, but super popular back in the day to do the crazy, wild paint jobs. I don't know if they'll come back. Everything's gone so kind of like tame. There's still guys that want to just have, a wild paint job, but it'll go to that extent where everybody had, hundreds of different colors and tribal graphics, and I know you got that tribal tattoo, Ronnie, that you got on your lower back.
It's a bob wire. It's a bob wire, and it says Boris on it. It's Boris spelt out of bob wire.
The closest we'll see to it is probably monochromatic come back again. That's where I think might be the closest we get.
I think you'll see it. Not quite as radical.
And two-tone.
Oh, sure, two-tone. Well, the one thing that we always talk about, it seems like with the 88 to 98s, is that the paint and the clear, and we are in a full, look at, Boris has made patina, rad, and he's also made fauxtina rad. Jerome obviously has helped with that, but I think when you look at the paint of an 88 to 98, it's tough because that clear it takes a beating. And so I think whether we see radical paint, you're just going to see a lot more paint in these classic trucks that we have kind of sat back on because of the older style square bodies, 67, 72s, C10s, whatever it is. Even if it's a Ford, that paint holds up, and it holds up really well. And the 88, 98 stuff just doesn't. So even if somebody goes back, I've got an 88 that I would love. If I painted it, I would paint it the exact same factory color. I would not change it. But I would love, for it to look fresh as well, because it doesn't look good patinaed, or we need to come up with a new name. Boris needs to come up with something where the clear just is going away. It's dissolving, and it's the 88 to 98 paint's there, but it's flaking off.
D-lamp.
Yeah.
It's called D-lamp.
It's bad.
I think I actually would enjoy to see some of the Scott Sullivan, Bob Thrash style paint job graphics come back. They weren't overkill. They were always subtle. And to me, you could pull any of Bob Thrash's or Scott Sullivan's cars from back in the early 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, and they still look fresh today. And another guy that used to do real nice graphics, not too many people know about, he didn't get a lot of credit he deserved, was Mark Work out of Amarillo, Texas. He did incredible subtle graphics back in the 90s, motorcycles and trucks and that.
He passed his stuff too. It's worked for me.
Yeah.
We had a guy that used to do all the painting. He passed away, unfortunately, had cancer. But Keith Passisto is his name. He used to do all of the custom paintings, and his stuff was real tasteful too. But he came out of that street rod market. He had a 33 Willys. He was. I think the styling and the trending in that genre of years really was dictated by the street rod guys. You had Boyd doing trucks and Alan Budnick, doing that. That Budnick truck is actually going over to Saudi Arabia for the auction. That yellow one. You remember that one he did with all that extensive metalwork?
100%.
That's actually that's going over there. He's actually going over there too, Alan.
It's funny that you kind of say that yellow too, because the street rodder guys love that yellow, and then that yellow did make a huge run in the mid 90s. Even GM was selling that yellow in an OBS or an S10 style truck, and you don't see that now.
They were used for fleet trucks back then. They had an orange color and a yellow color that were used for fleet trucks back then, and you could special order those. And that orange color was real popular for a fleet color back then. Guys would get them, like the state of Ohio, the state trucks were that orange color. And some of the transportation trucks were that yellow color, that were ordered for fleet trucks, but.
Well, I think California, they use the orange for their California roads, California highway, whatever it is. Yeah. I worked at U-Haul, and U-Haul was buying those OBS trucks, and they were putting that 454. Well, it had the Tonawanda 454 in it, and what a great truck. I mean, plenty of me fucking off with U-Haul trucks doing burnouts with big blocks in the parking lot because they had big blocks in them, and I could do it, and I was a young kid. Yeah. Gary, if you look back and you say, hey, I was either just stupid or I had these just tremendously huge balls, what happened that you got out of it in the middle of it, really, 95? That's a time of peak,
Yeah. So in 95, I lived my business. When I tell you I lived my business, our mail order hours were open till 10 o'clock at night, Eastern Standard Time. So I would leave like at 6 to run home. My house was close to my business. I'd run home and eat dinner with my wife. And I would have such a guilty conscience of my staff being there. I would turn around and come back as soon as they ate and stay with them back in the mail order room until we closed up at 10 o'clock at night. And then I'd be back there at 7:30 the next morning. It got to a point where the part of the business, the fun of the business, unfortunately started to slip away based on employee concerns. We got up to 6, and I never. So when I started this thing, we started out of our bedroom. I never really built the proper infrastructure management-wise while we were growing it. So, I mean, we went from me and my wife in 88 to 60 employees in a matter of like 4 years or 5 years. I mean, the thing was like a runaway freight train. So it got to a point, and I'll tell you the other thing I kind of got concerned about. I kind of got concerned that I had all of this huge overhead and employees. The fun was starting to go away. The employees were starting to get to me a little bit. I didn't have the right infrastructure management-wise underneath me. And an opportunity came, actually 2 opportunities. One opportunity was Summit Racing came to me, and back then they had a magazine called Truck Style, and I'll never forget this. And I ended up selling them another mail order company that I had after Stylin Concepts. But I'll never forget, we did due diligence for almost a year, and I decided that, my wife said to me, we were getting close to get a deal done, and my wife, I had to work for him for 5 years. And my wife said to me that, you're not going to fit into that corporate environment. You're an entrepreneurial, independent guy, and they're going to say something to you, and you're going to tell them indirectly some descriptive adjectives, and that'll be the end of it. So we actually pulled the plug and didn't sell that to Summit. And I'll never forget the president telling me that the money that we were going to take to buy you, we are now going to take and put that towards putting you out of business. And I thought I really, really, really screwed up big time. And the fact of the matter is, the owner of Summit Racing is a good friend of mine. The president of Summit Racing, who has recently retired, we remained friends for years after that. But I will tell you, I was scared shitless that they were going to put me out of business. And fortunately, they just never could penetrate the sport truck market. We ended up, an investment group ended up buying us about a year later. And, Stylin, they ended up selling it to U.S. Auto Parts and operate out of Carson, California. And I think if they can hang on, they're going to see a huge resurgence in that particular market again. But I ended up selling Stylin Concepts in 95. I started another mail order company called Hot Rod Hardware. Well, when I sold Stylin Concepts, I sold the Sport Truck Nationals to Peterson Publishing. And back then, because of the success of the Sport Truck Nationals, Peterson Publishing, the president, hired me to direct the Hot Rod Magazine, Power Tour, the Carcraft Magazine, Street Machine Nationals in St. Paul, Minnesota, Rod and Custom Magazine, Americruise, and then they still hold on to the Sport Truck Nationals. So I did that for, I believe, 6 years after I sold Stylin Concepts. And then after that venue, I started another mail order company called Hot Rod Hardware, which I ended up selling, ironically, to Summit Racing probably 15 years after I started Stylin Concepts. So it's been a crazy ride.
How did that go with your employees when you sold? Obviously, it sounds like you were looking to sell
So when I sold the company, the one stipulation that I had with the investment group was that they had to keep all the employees for a minimum of 1 year, or I wouldn't sell. That was part of the deal. And I'll tell you, when I sold that business, and because we had 60 people, I called 30 in at a time. It was probably one of the most emotional times of my life. I mean, I remember tears in my eyes and crying like a little kid, but, it just got to, the fun just went away, and you spend more time at work for your business than anything you do in your whole life. And when the fun goes away, it's just time to step back, So it wasn't the money. We definitely made enough money, and it just, the fun just stopped. It became too much of a job, and I've always worked close to 80 hours a week. I'm 67. I still work close to 80 hours a week, so I love working. I just, when the fun goes away, no matter what I'm doing, that's when I cut loose.
Yeah.
And I look for something else. And I think that a lot of your listeners need to take that to heart, that you really work is a majority part of your life, more than your social time, more than your time with your spouse, more than sleeping, more than anything. You got to enjoy what you're doing. And I think that's why we were successful at the beginning, because we loved the lifestyle and we lived that lifestyle, and it was 7 days a week, and we never turned it off. And fortunately, my wife is a huge car gal and probably can identify issues with cars, whether it be nervous body work or anything, better than 90% of the guys that I know. Boris will attest to that. I mean, so my spouse was behind me, and, when it was time to sell, it was time to sell. And my wife was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis back then, right around when I was selling it. So that was that wasn't the deciding reason, but, I knew she didn't need any more stress in her life, and we definitely had a lot of stress.
Yeah, well,
I hate to use that word, but
it's not like you're going to just go off into the sunset. You're a hard worker. You're going to drive. It's just the relationships that you had built with your employees. It's like, this is kind of a shitty deal, but this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah, and they knew that the fun was away from me, and ironically, 4 of my employees now work. Four of a lot of them. That when I sold it, the hot rod hardware business, some of my old employees from Stylin Concepts came to work for me in that company. And when I sold that company to Summit, that was part of the deal too, that they had to take the employees for 1 year. But ironically as it is, 4 employees now of that core group that when I started it, the first 10 employees, 4 of them now work for a company called DEI, which is the heat sound company, and they're out of Avon, Ohio. So 4 of them guys are still together from going back in the late 80s.
That's pretty cool. Now, Stylin Products, that was nothing to do with you guys?
What is it?
Stylin Products?
Yeah, that was another company that was out there, just Stylin. So
no, you're thinking of Stillin, maybe. Stillin?
Oh, I thought it was
Stylin. I mean, we had our own product line. We actually had our own suspension line that was private labeled for us back then. Like I say, we were Beltec's biggest distributor, but we also, DJM did a private product line for us on control arms, and Deutsch Tech, if you remember that name, with shock absorbers, did a private label for us on. So we had a Stylin parts private label that was, remanufactured. We were like a Mr. Gasket. Mr. Gasket really never made anything. They just repackaged everything. And that's what our suspension line was, and, our roll pan line and some of that stuff. We had a company called Rat's Glass make our roll pans, who actually built all those Speedstar bodies for Bobby Alloway, that hot rod body later on. And he did a lot of boat work for a lot of the boat manufacturers. He did a private label for us on all of the roll pans, and we had roll pans for every damn truck you can think of,
Yeah, they were popular. You look back, you made a lot of right moves, a lot of good moves. Do you have anything that you look back and you're like, God, I wish I could have changed that 1 or 2 things that you would have, anything you would have done different?
I was telling somebody the other day, I've been real fortunate and real lucky on a lot of the things that have happened to me along the way. When I was building these Hot Rod Magazine top 10 cars. I'm building these things out of a 2-car garage, man, before we started our business, our shop, And I worked for, I didn't go into business for myself until I was 35 years old. And I worked for a company called Diebold Incorporated. And Diebold makes all the big bank vaults and safes all over the world. And I don't have a college education, but I started out at Diebold. Believe it or not, I was a safe cracker. I would open safes in the banks, and if people lost their safe deposit keys, I would go in and with the county auditor and audit the box and open the safe deposit boxes. But I worked my way up. I was the only manager in that Fortune 500 company that didn't have a college education. And I'll never forget, this was one of those deals. I was vested, so I was there for 15 years. And I told my wife that I wasn't happy anymore working for the man in a Fortune 500 company, and I wanted to go build hot rods. I was building hot rods out of my garage at home. And my wife, being a Sicilian Italian, if I made $300 a week, she would find a way for us to live on it. Well, the closest I ever got to divorce is when I told my wife I was going to quit Diebold Incorporated to go work for myself. And it was, I told her, I go, look, let me try it for a year. And if it doesn't work, I don't like my job. And now I'll just go get a job somewhere else. And I'll just work somewhere else. I'll get a job. And if you talk to her today, she'll tell you it was all her idea. And she's the one that told me to quit Diebold. And but the reality was that she stood behind me on this whole deal and is still behind me today. And, I'm still taking chances in business. So your spouse it can either make you or break you in business.
Yeah, in life, right? I mean, now did you guys you guys have kids?
Yeah. I have a 40-year-old boy. Yep.
Okay. Now is he a hot rodder? Is he into it? Is he into any?
He appreciates, in the day he had lowered trucks and everything, and a lowered Astrovan, and he went through the whole gamut. And my son actually spent 12 years in Kentucky. He's not anymore because he's all busted up. But my son actually won the World Grand Nationals in showing horses. And we actually had a horse equestrian center in Lexington. But he's back in Cleveland now. He has been for 10 years. And he works in one of my businesses that I have.
Cool. Okay. Gary, stay on the line real quick here. I'm going to take everybody out. Always great to catch up with you, Boris. Sorry you won't be at the Get Down. Possibly see you at SEMA. What a great time. Gary, thank you so much for sharing the history. It's going to be so fun to see what happens in the future in the next 5 to 10 years. I think these 88 to 98s are going to take off. We're already there, really, but it'll be fun to see the journey that we have this second phase or this rebirth of the OBS. Maybe we can come up with a new name for them, the newest or the reborn body style or some shit like that. I don't know. I'll let Boris come up with something like that.
Yeah, I had asked Boris, what the hell is this OBS? I mean, we need old body style shit. Come on, that's new.
Yeah, for sure.
So
there they are again.
I educated on it myself.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny. And for the audience, we talked a little bit about how the forum kind of dictated that. So the GMT 400, old body style based upon the second gen or the GMT 800 coming out right about the time the forums came out. But we've hashed that out a little bit on OBS Talk already. So, Gary, thank you so much again for your time. Boris, you guys have a great week. Stay out of trouble. Do what you do. Late.
That's all, folks.